Hello, my name is Jason and I'm autistic. Today on Autism Awareness Day, I thought it was important, or is important, as an autistic person to advocate autism awareness. And I think it's a responsibility that all autistic people need to take into our own hands, because those who advocate for us that are not autistic often don't fully understand what it is to be autistic. And so it leads to a lot of stereotypes and poor information. And to be honest, nobody can fully understand what autism is if they aren't autistic. But saying that, we can try to explain it so that everyone else understands what it is to be autistic. So I'm going to try and explain a little bit what it's like to be autistic. Now, it's difficult because autism affects every aspect of our lives, every aspect. Aspects that we're aware of and others that we aren't aware of. It is so all-encompassing that it is really difficult, and a lot of times, for us to identify if it's the autism that is making us act or feel a certain way, or that's just how other people are. And that's part of the difficulty, is that we don't know what it's not like to be autistic. So we have to guess, and we have to observe, and we have to make kind of educated guesses as to whether or not our autism is affecting us in a certain situation, or if that's how normal people feel or act or whatever. I was diagnosed last year at 48, just before my 49th birthday, and it was both overwhelming and relieving. Overwhelming in the sense that it puts a spotlight on your entire life up to that point, and you feel as an overwhelming sense of kind of relief and validation, because we go our entire lives up until our diagnosis that we're broken, that we don't fit in, we don't understand why we don't fit in, we don't understand why it's hard for us to make friends, we don't understand a lot of things. And then once we get a diagnosis, it helps us to understand the why and the how of our entire life. And then we need to take the time to reconnect with ourselves. One of the attributes that almost all autistics have is a thing called masking. Masking is a tool that we have developed over our lives to try and help us fit in and act like everyone else. It's kind of I hate saying it this way, but it's like a false persona, because we want to fit in. We want to be able to socialize. We want to be able to converse with other people, but it's extremely difficult for us. we have to force ourselves to do things like eye contact, which is, and for me, I find it both very intimate in certain situations and very aggressive in others. And so it's very hard to do it, but throughout my life, I've had to force myself to do it because I grew up with the with the social norm that if you don't make eye contact, you're not a trustworthy person. And so this led to me having to learn to create eye contact. And as uncomfortable as it was for me, it helped me in life to be able to do that. The other problem is that when we make eye contact, we don't know when to stop sometimes, and it can make the other people very, very uncomfortable. We also have, a lot of us, I think almost all of us in some degree and in some areas, we have sensitivities. I have auditory sensitivities, I have light sensitivities. As far as I know, I don't have any sensitivities to textures, although I really don't like having my hands wet. And there are certain, I have a sensitivity to smell. For example, strong perfumes. Now, a lot of people have that and they aren't autistic, so I don't know. Autism is it's a neurological difference. Okay, so it's not something that we developed over time. It's not something that's going to get better or worse over time. Well, it could get worse over time. And it just means that our brains function differently than the vast majority. That's it. It's a neurological difference. And somebody decided to kind of name that neurological difference autism. Now, I personally don't like labels because it creates division. So that division is you're different. And in the vast majority, throughout our history as humans, difference is not readily accepted. Good case in point is racism. You know, the label of white and black rather than just people. The difference of, handicapped and able-bodied. Just all these little labels that we put on that create a division that make us treat other people differently rather than treat them like anybody else. And this is why we create a mask. And the reason I named my podcast Peeling Back the Mask is because I don't feel that it's healthy for us to mask. It's not healthy physically, it's not healthy mentally or emotionally. Because masking is forcing ourselves to ignore our autistic needs. Okay, we have a higher rate of depression and suicide than any other area of society. We have a higher rate of unemployment than any other part of society. And the reason for these is because we have to force ourselves to fit into a society, a world that is basically almost all against what we need as autistics or don't need as autistics. For example, bright lights. I have a light sensitivity, so I used to get a lot of headaches at work because of the bright lights. All the noise. I have a noise sensitivity. So all the noise is just a bombardment on my senses. And at the end of the day, I would get home and I would be completely exhausted. I would be burnt out. A lot of times I would go home and I would cry because I don't know, I felt so overwhelmed with everything and I didn't know how to process it, how to deal with it. And that's another facet of autism, is that we have a very, very hard time being able to process a lot of information at once. In a sense, when it's social. All the noise, all the lights and sounds and everything, we can't separate them. We can't drown them out naturally. So when we go into a noisy area where the majority of the population can just kind of drown it out, they can ignore it, we can't. Where people can adjust to certain environmental changes, we can't. We have horrible short-term memory, and that is because, in my opinion, because we have so much stimulus coming in all the time, sights, smells, sounds, feelings, that we get lost in it. We also tend to withdraw. I do it all the time. I spend more time in my head than I do, kind of in the world outside, because it's easier for me to kind of be out and about and go about normal life, whatever that is, and so I withdraw, which is, it's a little difficult because, for example, when I'm walking down the street, I'm in my head. I withdraw to a certain point so that I can just go and do what I need to do and get back home or wherever I need to go to minimize the amount of stress on my system. And this causes a bit of a problem socially because I can walk by somebody that I'm really good friends with and not even recognize them, because I'm more focused on where I'm going, what I need to do, and I've withdrawn to the point that I'm not processing faces. They're just people. They're like obstacles. And I'm more focused on my destination, doing what I need to do, and then leaving. And this is a necessary trait for us to be able to limit the amount of input that's bombarding us. Another aspect of autism, which is very common, is a very strong need for routine. Now, routine is calming because it doesn't require a lot of thought. It's just an automatic thing that we do, and it gives us a sense of tranquility, of security, that, it's very predictable. And part of the problem that we have is that the world outside is unpredictable. It's very chaotic. It's very difficult to navigate and understand. We have a very hard time understanding other people's emotions, their body language, things like that. So in a lot of senses, we may not understand a joke. We may not get sarcasm. We may not realize when somebody's sad or somebody's angry. On the other side of that is that there are also people that are autistic that can. They're very intuitive that way. They pick up on it. And this is because we're hypersensitive, we're hypervigilant, we're hyper-observant. And I'm that way. I observe everything. My eyes are always moving. I'm always watching things and observing people. I think as a community, autistics are very observant because we have to be. It's observing others helps us to kind of assimilate the traits that we feel we need to incorporate in order to fit in and be like everyone else. And so if we weren't observant, we weren't people watchers, then we wouldn't be able to successfully create a masking tool case. So in that sense, for me specifically, I'm very observant of people. I've learned to kind of feel rather than see how people are feeling, their emotional states, and kind of read how that person is. I'm very much intuitive in that sense, is that I can feel how another person is, whether they're a good person, bad person, and there are always certain aspects of that person that I observe, and I'm almost never wrong. It's very, very, very rare that I'm wrong. And this is a part of autism. This isn't, a parlor trick that I've learned or anything like that. This is something that, for us, it's part of a survival I don't know. I lost the word, sorry. It's also another thing is that we can often forget what we're doing or what we're saying in the moment. I've read tons of posts by other autistic people where, they'll walk into the kitchen and they'll forget what they went in there for. And they have to do a mental backtrace to try and remember why they went into the kitchen. It happens to me all the time. I'll walk into the kitchen and I'm completely in blank. I'm like, well, what am I doing here? Why did I come in here? And I have to do a backtracking mentally to kind of figure it out. And so this tends to happen when we have a lot of things going on. And it's also very difficult for us to change in the moment. So, for example, if we plan something, we've got it all worked out in our head. Every step, every detail is worked out in our head. Now, if all of a sudden something in that changes, it's often very difficult for us to assimilate that change and make that change mentally. And we'll tend to get upset. I do. It's when I was working, I would have a routine. I would do things exactly the same way every single day. And if I was working and I got interrupted, it was very hard for me to get back to what I was doing. I would have to retrace my steps, basically start from zero. Even though I had all the information there, I would look at it and go, why do I have this open? And so I would have to go back and go, okay, and then work forward again. And this is another very common trait. We tend to have the need to rest more than others because it takes longer for us to recover from this bombardment of stimulus, especially when we've had to socialize and we're sitting there, we're trying to kind of follow everything, and it just gets to a point where we kind of shut down. Now, they may seem like a lot of negative aspects, but there are some very unique positive aspects that we have as autistics, and one of them is stimming. Stimming, for me, for the majority, is counting on the edges of my fingers. I've been doing it the whole time I've been recording. This is, I read an explanation once that was really, really good, or I heard an explanation, I can't remember which, that our brains are like a computer. When a computer is getting overloaded or really working, it starts up the fan. The fan increases in speed. And this is our fan. This is to help us to kind of cool down in the moment when we're in a situation that is making us anxious and nervous. This we use to help us to diminish the amount of stress and anxiety, which, as far as I'm aware, the majority of the population doesn't do. And so they get very stressed and they don't know how to deal with it. And for us, stimming, it's called, is an advantage that we have to allow us to calm down, to kind of be able to keep functioning, keep going throughout our day. And it's a very useful tool, and I would actually recommend it to anyone. It's like, they have those stress balls. That's a form of stimming. If you're not autistic but you use that stress ball, you're stimming, right? You're using it to help you to relax. It's giving you something else to focus on. Meditation is another way to, kind of bring us down. So this, I guess you could say, is a form of physical meditation. It just helps us calm down. We are very, very good at recognizing patterns, the most of us, not all of us, of organizing information, of finding solutions that aren't readily apparent to everybody else. We jump over the unnecessary. We think, okay, what is the problem? We need a solution, not, if I do this, then this, and this. But there's the solution. Okay, I've got a solution. So then it cuts out all the middle, right? If you've ever been in an office meeting or something like that, a meeting at work, and they're trying to find new ideas, and everyone's, well, what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And they'll get shot down because everyone, no, this, and this. When we come up with a solution, it's all that information that, well, what about this and this and this, is already there. We already know it. It doesn't need to be expressed. So our solution includes all of that necessary stuff in order for the solution to work. We tend to think very, very fast. Communication is often very difficult for us. Communicating our emotions, our feelings on things, our thoughts on things sometimes are very difficult. But it isn't a sign of lack of intelligence. What it is apprehension. We don't want to express it out of a habit of not expressing ourselves for fear that others will see us as not normal, or that we feel that because we're unaware of how others feel in a certain situation, we have that doubt as to whether everyone else feels that way. And so we're very cautious in expressing ourselves like that. We do feel everything the way everybody else does. We express it differently. We internalize things more. I was nonverbal for a number of years. I didn't talk at all. My answers were yes, no, shrug of the shoulders, or something very short. In fact, if I talked for the 27 minutes or whatever that I've been recording, I would start to feel dizzy and nauseous, like I was going to throw up. And I had to learn to communicate. I had to take a course in therapy to learn how to communicate, learn the different types of communication. And that helped me in a lot of ways to be able to sort out my thoughts, to be able to verbalize what it is I think and feel. And it's an advantage that I have over not just other autistics, but people in general, is that I notice that a lot of people just don't know how to express themselves. And I was able to work with a therapist, a professional in communication and emotions, identifying emotions, all kinds of things. But for those that aren't verbal, who are very closed, who don't talk very much, or talk about very specific things all the time and nothing else, I'll get to that in a second, it isn't a lack of intelligence. And that is I think a misconception, and a very damaging one, is that because we don't communicate like everyone else, or we don't communicate at all, it signifies a lack of intelligence. And nothing could be further from the truth. We have what are called special interests. Special interests are things that we obsess over, essentially. And we know everything about it. We can, for example, cars, we can tell you that for a certain year they had a certain type of motor. This motor gave out a certain type of, X amount of horsepower. It went from 0 to 60 in so many seconds, and blah, blah, blah. We can tell you everything about it. And we will talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, and generally not give other people an opportunity to participate in the conversation. This is, of course, a difficulty, but it's a difficulty in various aspects, in that that's what we really want to talk about when we're talking. We don't do small talk. Generally, it's very redundant to us. the small talk, we know that there is something else we want to talk about. So why do all the, hi, how's your day? How are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Hey, and then get to the point. We just get to the point. And we also have what's called a hyper-focus generally. A lot of us will get focused on what we're doing, and we block out everything else. We aren't aware that, people are talking to us. We aren't aware. We lose track of time. We tend to neglect eating, hygiene, things like that, sleep. And I was like that. I worked as a web designer for a while, and I would get very into what I was doing, and I would forget to eat. I would forget to go to the bathroom. I would have to go. I knew I had to go, but I'd be like, okay, in a few minutes I'll go. And I would leave it until it was urgent. I had to go now. And I would go and come back to work, and I would forget to eat. There were times when I didn't eat for 2 days. I would eat once in 2 days. And so while the hyperfocus can be very beneficial in work, it can be very detrimental when it comes to our mental and physical health. I don't know, there's just so much about autism that people should know to help give a better understanding of how we live our lives, how we see the world, or how we don't see the world, and to respect us more as people, to allow us to be who we are without having to mask and pretend to be like everyone else. And this is kind of the root of what Autism Awareness Day is the hope that people will look for information, try and educate themselves on what autism is. It isn't an easy task, even for us, but a little bit of information is better than none. Basically being ignorant of what autism is and how it affects us. So to those of you who aren't on the autistic spectrum, please take some time out today or any time to look up some information about autism written by Autistics. Okay, that's really important, because if you go and find information that's written by psychologists and doctors, they're going to tell you that it's a neurological illness, irregularity, disease. There's 100 different words that they use, and it's not. We don't see it that way. Okay, we see it as a difference, nothing else. And we want all of you to see it as a difference, nothing else. And accept that difference, and accept us for who we are. And for those who can't, for those who, don't embrace that difference in us, that's fine. We're better off without you in our lives. And you're totally free to live your life the way you want without, having an autistic person in your life. But at least be educated on what it is. So I hope that helped. I know I rambled a little bit. I tend to do that. But I hope it helped to give a little more awareness to what autism is and how we are. And of course, each of us is different in certain areas, but I hope that gave a start. And we appreciate your support. We appreciate your acceptance. We appreciate your respect for those that do. And for those that don't, it's up to you how you want to do it, of course, but I think that by becoming educated, you help make the world, not just for us, but for everybody, a little bit better. And hopefully it will come to you being more acceptable or accepting of other differences as well. So that's me. My name is Jason. I'm autistic. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm a human being. And I want to be treated that way. So this is my video for Autism Awareness Day. Take care, and thank you for watching.